Years ago, I was a student at a Bible college, and the president of the college came to me one day and he said, Al, one day you're going to be an apostle to Russia. Now, this is years before I ever stepped into the Soviet Union and had no idea of what God had in store for me. But at the time, I laughed and I said, an apostle. And obviously, I didn't understand much of what that meant. But it shocked me, it surprised me, and I showed that surprise. Years later, I understand that a little more now, and I take that as a very prophetic word that president had for me. Now, what does it mean to be apostolic? Are we as ywam apostolic? Are we you and I? Are we apostles? What does this mean? And I don't want to get too deep into the, the whole underpinnings of this, but other than to say that the word comes from apostolos, the Greek, and it means a person sent. And it was used more in the New Testament to designate function rather than status. And yeah, it took me a while to understand this, and I think uh, it's probably something that we're understanding more and more in YWAM. I had a young person come to me a while back. This was at a conference in Albania, a YWAM staff conference, and he was a young Russian leader, and he said, I have this confusion. He said, I have a real vision, a real burden for my own country, and a calling for Russia, but at the same time, I have this burden for Africa and sometimes for other parts of the world. He said, "What? How do I handle that? What do I do with that?" And so I shared with him the original vision that Lauren had of the world map and how it came alive, and young people were covering the continents. And I said that when Lauren had this, he saw this as a calling personally for him. And one of the things, the outworkings of this, was that he was to go to these nations and put his foot there and call out the young people to go into the world. And yeah, if you look at that, that's been very much fulfilled today as young people have gone into every nation, from every nation. And YWAM's been amazingly used of God to do this. And I told this young man, I said that it was at that time that we were being called into missions, my wife and I, and a man came to us and he said, "Well, you don't want to follow this guy Lauren Cunningham. He's not a real missionary. Look at him. He goes all over the place and in all these different nations, and he's never established a work anywhere in the world. And what kind of missionary is that?" Well, it's obviously a different kind of a missionary, and what he's done with his calling has been amazing, and it has spread missions everywhere around the world. And I think that Lauren was used as an apostle to raise up the apostolic or apostles, those that would be sent, and his whole message was go. The other one that gave us this message to go was Jesus. And do you know that Jesus was an apostle? Well, the very word that is used to say that Jesus was sent of the Father is the same word, sent, apostolo. And so Jesus was, yeah, the first apostle to be sent to this world, to another place, to another people, another culture, and to bring the message of the Father to us. And Jesus understood this job of the apostolic, this task that was put before him. There's a story that in the New Testament where Jesus is at the house of Peter's mother-in-law, and it's quite an event where she's sick, and he comes and he raises her up out of the bed, and she's made well, and because of that, people are coming from all over, and they're crowding around the house, and they're wanting to get in, they're wanting to see Jesus, and in the midst of all of this, Jesus goes away, and the disciples finally find him, and they said, Jesus, what are you doing? All these people are here to see you. They've come from everywhere. They're crowding around. Come. And he looks at them and he says, let's go somewhere else. Let's go to these other villages. And you can imagine the disciples surprised. Jesus, what do you mean? Here's all these people. They're here. They're wanting the message. They're wanting to be touched by you. And isn't that something that we hear often? Just pastors or different ones say, why are you going somewhere else? There's enough need here. There's enough to do here. There are people that need the message here. But Jesus knew that the seed needed to be spread. The gospel needed to go out into all the world. And so he said, go to Jerusalem, go to Judea, go to Samaria, go to the ends of the earth. And the disciples, they didn't obey that necessarily in the beginning. They stayed in Jerusalem until they were finally shaken out. And Jesus said that you are the salt of the earth. You're the light. And of course, the salt, in order to be effective, has to be spread out. And so we as salt need to take the goodness of the gospel, the goodness of God, and spread it everywhere where it needs to go. The other aspect of salt is that it's a preservative. And when people discovered this aspect of salt, and they learned that they could rub it into fish, they could rub it into meat, that it would cause the meat not to spoil, because meat rots. Well, so do nations. And God looked down on the earth, and he said that this stench of the sin of Sodom came into his nostrils, and he could take it no more. And so he said, I need to go talk to my friend Abraham. And so they have this discussion about what to do, and God says he's going to destroy them, and Abraham says, no, wait, would you destroy them for what if there's 50 righteous there? And he says, no, I wouldn't destroy them for 50 righteous. And what about 40? What about 30? What about 10? And he says, no, I wouldn't destroy them if I could find 10 righteous. Well, the thought in my mind is, what if there was a ywam outreach team in Sodom that came at that time to reach that city? Perhaps, just perhaps, God would have spared it for that. Do you see why it's important for us to go into all the world? Why that salt is needed everywhere? And this is the apostolic ministry that God's called us to be everywhere, to go where people haven't gone before. And this is part of our values, is to do new things in new ways, and to go to places where the gospel hasn't been preached. And this is the apostolic. And where is this young Russian today? I was just with them as they're sending them out from DTS that they were in, and they were on their way to outreach. And today he's in Africa. Just got a note from him, and so he's following that calling that God's given to him. He still has a calling for Russia, but here he is taking teams to Africa, and there are those teams right now from Russia Egypt and Nepal and different places that because this young man has this apostolic vision and calling, for the world. And so this is the apostolic. And so I want to encourage you with this. And maybe I could just put this one more word to you. Something that's really encouraged me is a message that Floyd McClung, one of our ywam leaders, gave to us some years ago. And it's called The Passion for the Apostolic. And you could find it if you look up Floyd McClung, Google him and his material. And I encourage you to listen to that message so that you too can get this passion for the apostolic. But let's go, obey Jesus, and go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Amen.